we go forward now, let's talk about the tales from season 4. And there's a lot more, again, talesfrombeyondthepale.com, Amazon, Audible, iTunes. There's so many different ways you can pick it up. Also go to the website and buy the box sets, seasons 1 through 4 now.
Yep.
Awesome. Seasons 1 through 4.
And the vinyl we have also absolutely gorgeous for those of you with a turntable. What could be better than our gatefold classic tales, Hole Digger and the Trawler. Trawler, yeah. Fantastic.
How much does that go for?
$35 frickin'.
All right, good. I'm going to have to get a copy before I leave.
Do the math. It's easy. It's worth it.
At home.
Yeah, I love having the physical product. You know, I'd love to get more Tales from Beyond the Pale on.
And
vinyl.
the nice thing was, when we got this opportunity, we re-recorded the host saying, you know, and now flip your record over.
Right.
And there was just something, a true thrill doing that, and knowing that the listener gets to the end of side 1 and is prompted by the same voice.
Next time we should have a locked groove. Host just saying, look out! Look out! Look out!
Close your eyes. Close your eyes.
Hello. You're more than welcome to. The show wouldn't be the show without it. So
that's true.
Looking at the Stanley, you're going back in April 2014. Tales Which We Tell, Part 1 and Part 2, kicks off Season 4.
Yes.
Now, is it true, Larry, that when you approached the Stanley, people thought you were Nicholson?
Yeah, there's a lot to say about that.
Good. Talk about the 2 episodes.
So, with Tales We Tell, what I liked about that is it really speaks to how Glenn and I approach this project, which is that we're given an opportunity to perform live at a specific location, and I think we always
say yes.
We always say yes.
The honesty.
And, you know, the idea is that we're going to make an original tale. We have a lot of friends, including our beloved spouses, who say, why the hell wouldn't you just perform one of the old ones that are written? But we're very stubborn, and I think part of the mission is always to respond to the moment and to put something new out there, and that's the agenda. So with Tales We Tell, I was inspired, obviously, that we were going to go to the Stanley Museum Hotel, where Stephen King supposedly was inspired to write The Shining, and then it's this weird disconnect because it's named the Stanley Hotel. It's completely unrelated to Kubrick, but you sort of feel the Stanley-ness of it all, and so the whole thing. So I wanted to write a story about a writer who goes there to seek inspiration and writes a horror tale, and that's when we had this idea, oh, cool, well, we're going to do 2 tales. Why doesn't Glenn's... He can write whatever he wants, but that can become the tale that's told, as it were. So we had a fun little... That was just...
Tale in the tale.
Yeah, we have these weird things, and that's just what we stick with.
We do. I think what it was also was it was our first show on the road, so I'm not sure if I was quite comfortable with the idea of doing a double bill just yet, you know.
Right.
Whereas this felt like, it's gonna flow continuously in and out, and it was a great way of getting the 2 stories out there. I love knowing that Larry was off doing his own thing, and the one thing that I wanted to do was tie around with the idea of homophobia and turn it on its head a little bit. So it was cool that we had this idea that we both could approach as an open slate. We weren't really relying on one another or what one another's content, as it were. And once we sort of got the 2 pieces together,
which was fun.
I think once we put them together, we added a line or 2 here or there to sort of seal the deal, as it were. But it was a fun, interesting, weird evening. I remember it well. Do you remember another event which we had quite a few musicians up there as well, and we had this lovely chap who records as Chrome Canyon, who did all of our what do you call it, the Theremin, live Theremin, and did some synth work for us. But he had pre-recorded this crazy piece of air guitar that was going to go over one of the a very specific moment, I think, in one of the pieces in the piece that you had written. But for some reason, it just kept triggering. So for like at the oddest moments, like just this air guitar coming out and deafening everyone, and people just dug it. You know, I love the fact that it's sort of nerve-wracking, but once we get up there, whatever happens. You know, we'll incorporate it. You know.
Yeah.
And you had Anna Asensio there for it.
Yep.
Beautiful Island.
She was fantastic. She was an old comrade from season 2. She's not in season 2, but we met her there, and she would come to Dixon Place, and that's when she first told me about Most Beautiful Island. And then I, in fact, on our drive back to the airport after this Stanley event, she pitched Most Beautiful Island more specifically, and that's when I said, let's do it. So it was in that drive from Stanley. So to respond to the Nicholson thing, it is funny. We were there, and there was a Jack Nicholson impersonator.
Really?
Who was clearly paid, and, you know, it was a great idea because...
Pale shadow of Larry.
Well, yes, but, you know, he looked like Nicholson sort of... post-80s, and he had the sunglasses, and it was just funny because we just started eyeing each other because I was like, and he was getting a lot of attention and people taking the photos, and so, you know, he was serving his purpose. But by the end of the, you know, the second day, we were sitting together, like having drinks, and it was fascinating to learn the life of, you know, a celebrity impersonator. And he was like, yeah, the Danny DeVito guy is great, but he doesn't do the voice, and it's just bullshit. You know, he doesn't do the hard work. And it was so, you know, this guy was like, he was a car mechanic, but people had been telling him for 20 years that he looked like Jack Nicholson. So he kind of educated himself. He learned to do an imitation, and it was just cool to see basically a working man who had this small gift, which is that he looked like Nicholson, and that's what he did, man.
Wow. Is there an agency?
Oh, 100%. Are you kidding?
Oh, yeah.
And he goes to Las Vegas. I mean, this is a real job, and he was probably amply paid. I wasn't paid his penny, by the way.
We paid.
Yeah,
You
we
know the next line
paid.
of work for you.
Blood, sweat, and tears.
Exactly.
I work for you.
That's all I got.
Well, what about, Glenn, what about the aspect of the sound design for the snow and the weather? Because in the final part of Tales We Tell, you know, you have the snowstorm, you have that hike up the path with the girl, and things are just unfolding. So you've got to deal with so much detail. Both you know, with the sounding of the crunching of the feet, the aspect of the storm coming down, the shivering, the stabs of the knife. I mean, there's a lot there to create with. I mean, talk.
Spoiler alert.
Did you actually go outside and record the snow?
I don't remember what we did.
I would say actually a lot of that is Foley, the crunch of the footsteps, the stabbing. There's a lot of Foley that recorded very nicely on that evening. And I believe that maybe we had John Morrows do our sound design for that piece. And we'd work with John a couple of weeks before going out to the event, and you know, really hone in on. We can get very, very specific and super anal about the exact type of wind and crunch.
Exactly. Well, that's why I asked
that
about
we need.
Yeah.
So, and then we brought John, I believe. Yes, of course he did. We had John Morris come out to the show and just trigger all the sounds live with us then. So a lot of prep went into it. You really are just designing the piece in the comfort of your own home, hopefully then sort of going out and triggering all these and layering them over each other. That's the thing. It's not just like pressing one button and it all with the actors kind of trying to keep in time.
Right.
It's
exactly.
the opposite.
Can sound.
Yeah. In the piece we recorded up in Lincoln Center, Larry has a piece called "Who Killed Johnny Bernard," and really I was kept on my toes. There was just a lot of cool sound designs needing to happen at very specific moments, but also needing to layer over one another at very specific moments, and then suddenly out, you know. So I love it. I love that challenge. It's nerve-wracking when you're doing it. And when I go back and listen to these things on my microphone, I'm like, oh, God, I could have held off, or you know, but it's a tapestry. You know?
I think we
It's a great
really
town.
we set a high bar for ourselves because I think we both can see what's possible, and it gets down to the nanosecond. You know, you and you're still dealing with a live actor, but you know that as soon as somebody says, "And that's when I knew she'd enter the room," you want
Right,
the door right
exactly.
there, and I can just,
the
you know,
timing.
Glenn and I
Yeah.
are. And we're all doing
Well, we do.
different
Even
things, and
though
we
like-
really want that kind of precision. And
Which
yet,
is
you know,
why I
we're
like
all-
Larry acting, so I can do it. So, no, but I'll often look up and you're like, oi,
Yeah.
press it, press the button.
It's pretty grand, I must say. You're really in a zone. It's like, I mean, we keep making the music references, but it couldn't be more like music
No, I have-
because that sax solo has to come in
Right,
at
exactly.
that moment.
And the sax has been brought out twice live.
Well,
now.
yes, speaking of the sax, but I meant it metaphorically, but yeah, I play.
Yes, you do. We've
A
talked
couple
about it
times.
before. Yeah.
Was once fun to. A couple times we've done it more as just a sound effect. It's been
Yeah, for Caper, you really got super
Who was your guy?
abstract with
Stetson?
it. Colin Stetson was
Colin Stetson,
an
we were
influence
inspired
on.
by.
That's a great name.
Well, he's just a sax player who really uses the instrument.
I
as
forget
a-
the type of sax he uses. It's about 9 foot
Like a
tall,
bassoon.
and he's got about 25 mics on it. So he's
Oh my
he's
God.
recording what his his
Right,
fingers
right.
are doing. So that becomes the
Part of
rhythm,
the sound,
and
Wow.
it's really nice stuff. But I have to say, just going back to this whole live thing, I have so many great memories of Tales from Beyond the Pale now. You think about
Really, I can't remember anything that's happened.
Have another beer.
I'm clutching onto these memories. They're all I have. But well, suddenly being in a different state and with a bunch of your friends,
Right.
and telling stories to a live audience, it's thrilling. It really is a lot of fun. You know, I love the studio, the safety of the studio, but there's just something, you know, really sort of memory making about putting these shows on
alive.
live. You know,
Yeah.
And it's funny, I mean, look, we go to these film festivals and people are watching movies, and maybe they're doing an interactive game, and that's also cool. But it's rare that they're going to something that approximates theater, and so I think there's a great deal of goodwill towards Tales, and they're also all the usual thing about some sort of nostalgia towards audio plays from their youth, whatever it was. And so and then we're very lucky when we do have a celebrity who's there to promote a film, like
Right.
a Barbara Crampton or whoever. So there's a number of things that combine to make it a really very warm, affirming environment, and I think that's why it goes over and why they're such fun events.
When you guys got to Los Angeles, what was it like?
Oh,
to...
look! Here's the composer of the Tales theme.
Ooh. How's it going? Hey, Jeff. Big fan.
Jeff, do you have anything to say about the Tales theme, which you wrote in 10 minutes, but we've been using for 10 years?
Which will be featured on the radio episode that we're...
Yeah.
Anything? A man of
No,
such music.
he's waiting
brings
for his
silence.
residuals. That's all he has to say. Anything else?
Nothing off the top of my head.
It's nice to meet you. Good to meet you.
Speaking of that theme song, do you remember at the end of season 3 we recorded ourselves as little gremlins singing along to it? What happened to that? I think I pulled the plug. I was like, this is ridiculous.
It's a bad move.
Oh, man.
Oh,
But
well.
when
Those
you guys...
files exist. They're out there somewhere.
God,
Yes.
part of the extras on the next recording.
Yeah.
When you got to Los Angeles, because Los Angeles and with the Stanley, it's a double bill.
Yes.
You've got Power Tricks and you've got the Tales That We Tell. But you have a 3-pack when it comes to Los Angeles. What's the thinking going into, and we'll leave it at this, the Cine Family and that venue, because that was, when it was open, was huge
Yeah.
for silent movies, for the aspect of entertainment. It really was a hub. So you were in a place that had a life of its own. So what's the thinking going into it?
Well, I'll start off by talking about the idea of putting on 3 shows. I think it was just we wanted to push ourselves beyond the double bill
Right.
which was essentially what we did. Although you could argue it's one piece for Tales We Tell. Just like the idea of going, God, we're going out here. Why not
Make
make
it worth
a
it.
bigger event? I felt like with Tales We Tell, for the live event itself, just speaking selfishly, I felt it was over a little too soon. We were all geared up, and then it was just like, okay, and we were done. So I wanted to have a sort of a longer night, believing that we were getting strong enough to hold, not that it was an hour and a half, but maybe that was the thinking,
Right,
to put on
exactly.
the show for an hour and a half, that we could really be on top of things and get that rolling. So I think, again, just pushing the boundaries that we sort of, where we were coming from,
And I just do whatever Glenn wants.
Well, you've got the Mattress King, you've got Conviction, and you've got the Vampire Party that's a part of the 3-pack, and they're all distinctly different in performance, in storytelling, in symbolism, in the aspect of personally where you two are coming from as writers. You also have a different environment, and the way Fessenden presents the newspaper and talks about it, it's a great connecting piece as well. And again, you can find themes and you can find ways to build that binge society that we live in. And for a live show to be able to build that, that's a really, really clever trick. And the newspaper's great. Do you really pick up newspapers when you come to new areas? Is that true, Larry?
Well, naturally, one does that in some form or other. You
Fair
become
enough.
aware of the new environment, the new local paper. Like here, it's is the New York Times, the Post, and the Daily News, and you go out there and you're like, oh, look, this is their orientation. They got the Los Angeles Times and whatever their rags are.
Right.
But look, the bottom line is that Glenn and I are faced with, like, in 3 weeks we're going to touch down and we got to have some tales. We both go into our corners and we start writing. We invite someone like Clay to help us, and we just start building the show. And then we basically ignore the host because we just figure that's the least of our worries.
Right, exactly.
But then comes like 2 days, 3 days, and it becomes important to come up with something that will sort of frame the piece. And this is part of the thrill, and this is where we are like old-time working showbiz guys. It's a carnival, so we have to come up with that. And so that just seemed like a nice thing where you'd have the texture of the newspapers and it would be an entree into the so-called environment.
It turned out very nice. That came from you because I was pulling a blank. I was
But
like,
that's
I don't
what
know
I'm
what
saying.
the fuck we're going
Is
to do here.
quite honestly,
Think of something.
Yeah, because Glenn was actually, and this is to his credit, he was still revising his piece till the next morning,
Which
I
is
should
not
say.
uncommon.
Wow.
Yeah, which is the way I had been pretty settled with my piece, so I was good, and I was now focusing on the hosts, and I came up with that notion, and I always give it to Glenn, and he's going like, that's cool, maybe cut this, and maybe that could be done. But, so that's how it came about. But this is all about, I like that aspect of Tales, is there's a certain amount of winging it, which is not to say, it's to say that there's a certain amount of like, we're going to go in there and we're going to get the concept, we're going to make it work.
Yeah,
I don't know in what. In Montreal, it was a little.
I think it's
it didn't work. It doesn't work every time.
No, I think it did work. It was our wingiest show, though.
It was a little wingy, but we call it, and it's true. It's the pub show, so it has its own vibe.
And I think
Its own personality.
we were adjusting the host. I think we were, really nailing the host an hour before we were going on,
You mean in LA or
in sorry, this is in Montreal.
Oh, in Montreal. I don't know what the host was doing.
LA, I felt like we
Although
went
I threw in some French. That's the one
Yes,
thing.
you did. You
I
did
know.
very well with the French.
I know a little French. So.
with the LA show, I went in fairly well prepared, but we had quite a few technical hiccups on the night. But
Oh, you mean the complete and total crash of the entire sound drive? Yeah.
the sound design cut out a few times.
Jesus Christ.
Which was an odd challenge to be faced with when you're in post-production. You're
Right.
sort of having to sort of rebuild stuff that didn't quite make it on the night. But I think even with the odd mistake and that happened on that evening, people enjoyed it. I feel like people sort of really got behind us. And it was an interesting show because I don't know where Conviction came from. Really, I think maybe Larry, you might have written the Vampire Party first, and I was like, "Damn, he's written it."
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly.
Or and I don't know. I just this idea, this sins of the grandfather almost coming back to haunt the kid. It probably came from there, and I don't know, but that was a piece I sort of wasn't quite sure of, and Larry encouraged me to keep going with that one.
Yeah, I thought
glad you did.
That's what was cool. There was a lot of exploration with that up to the night. And it's fun how some of these pieces are fairly intuitive and other ones are a real struggle. Mm-hmm. Like I wrote No Signal.
Right.
Was a response to what I thought was Glenn and April's incredibly powerful cold reading.
Right.
And even that, Glenn and I were talking, and I was like, I don't know if you need a puppet, and it was just fun. So we had a little bit of a back and forth as he developed that story, and then he basically nailed it, and that was in a great place.
Up.
Yeah,
we have a week to go.
Yeah, and then I had this concept of like, wouldn't it be cool to do a sequel so that the audience is seeing a story, 100 years later in the same location. So I was waiting for Glenn to finish so that I could even begin mine, and I had a go at it, and I sent it to Jen Wexler. I'm a very private artist. I never share anything.
Right.
But I sent it to her, and she said, this makes no sense. It's actual crap. And I really had to appreciate, I had to go back to the drawing board. I was on your deck getting the word that I was faking it and it wasn't working. So, it was a good revision. And I always send my stuff to Glenn, and he also can I don't want a lot of input, but I'll take it from just one or two people, and
makes sense.
Helps push me along. For example, he had a lot to say about the very recent one we did, which isn't available to the public. But
which one is it?
With the goblins.
In the Wind. Yeah.
In the Wind. Which is really one of my favorite pieces now. And we had a great time when we did it, but it was also needed some help. So
I think
it's a good back and forth.
Looking back on things, the Cold Reading and No Signal show was one of my favorites.
Sure is one of the cleaner recordings. Well, we actually had our shit together.
Yeah, I mean, we stripped down. I had learned...
Most unusual evening. Startling.
I think I'd start to learn a lot of the programs and started Pro Tools, and not just Pro Tools, Ableton Live. I started getting into that and triggering and just developing a confidence that I didn't really have before for just triggering these stuff live and on a dime and stuff, and also bringing in music and layering stuff and putting effects on stuff live and stuff like that just became a lot more fun. And I think Cold Reading and No Telling, the fact that they're all set in the same house over a span of 100 years was a nice environment to play in as well. It wasn't like we had to dart all over the place. We could just hone in on the atmosphere of that piece. So I love it. I love those two pieces a lot.
Yeah.
I think they're fun and they're dark, and there's a lot of things being said in those pieces, and they're managing to sort of be quite jovial as well. I think my Cold Reading starts off old-timey, but pretty quickly ramps into some dark territory and some very fun territory as well.
It's very connected. How many people out there who, have not ever thought about something like that? And to throw it out, and I don't know if it's necessarily what you're touching on, but for me, it connects because we've all had moments and thoughts about things like that, and for that honesty, those dark secrets to come out, and it's very prevalent right now in our society.
Yeah,
what we're going through.
Yeah, you're right.
It's fascinating to look at.
Then I think what's fun about No Signal is, as far as taking this very simple location, but then I was playing with sort of the upstairs and the downstairs, and there's some of those things. So we had that to play with.
That was nice to expand on it. Yeah,
and then of course there's the idea of returning to a character. Because one thing we haven't done with Tales, and I think it's because we want to keep working with other people and creating standalone pieces, but we never have that sort of continuing storyline, the binge viewing.
You're not the
thing.
Watcher, are you, from the Marvel Universe?
Yeah, well, which everybody is looking for that ongoing storyline. So what was fun is to have a sequel at all and to have a character return, and we hold off quite a long time in No Signal, but then eventually one of the characters reoccurs, and you're.
Did it push you? Did No Signal and Cold Reading push you? Because I mean, you're playing a drunk.
I think it did.
You're playing a puppet, then you're playing another puppet.
Puppet and a drunk.
Exactly right. You're playing several roles. I mean, you do it. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that it was really interesting watching Larry's process for Cold Reading. You didn't quite find the lead right up until performance, and it was at the tail end of rehearsals that you found him. And it was a very interesting and quite a relief to see you pull it all together like that, because you had Stanley down, who was this cantankerous mad fucker, and then you had Mr. Edwards.
Right.
And I think the further those two got from one another, the stronger the entire performance is. It's a great performance, and Larry doesn't really like me complimenting him that much, but it is a really...
Oh, well, it's okay. Just this once. Just this once.
We have it documented. It's good.
It's a fabulous performance.
Yeah.
And it was... There's those shows, and that show, Cold Reading, there's not a lot of post-work done on that. So it was pretty amazing. I mean, I don't know. I wrote it with April and I directed it, so I have my own perspective. But I can listen to that, and I'm not hearing one actor. I'm hearing two characters go at one another, you know. And to loosen up that connectivity between the two was a real triumph for me. I'm so proud of that.
If I may ask, Larry, dealing with the Mattress King and dealing with Cold Reading and No Signal, you play a tremendous drunk. And the reason why I bring it up is because with the Mattress King as well as Cold Reading, it's two different sides of a drunk. And when you hear drunk, it's one umbrella, this person's this, or there's different shades of drunk. You seem to be able to pull off being a drunk really, really well. And a lot of times it's because you're coping with something with your character. It's not just being drunk for the drunk's sake. It's coping. Can you talk about what the challenge is to be able to cultivate a drunk character? Because in the Mattress King, especially in that final minute of it, when you understand exactly what's about to happen, you're buying for your hundreds of friends, it really just blows my doors off to listen to the way that you become that monster.
I mean, I only appreciate that because the cliche of the drunk character is something that is so sort of aggravating, you know. So, I mean, I'm very sensitive to trying to avoid that.
Right.
And, you know, in my film Habit, I play a drunk, and I have great admiration for this film Under the Volcano with Albert Finney, where he obviously was a drinker, but he's notoriously sober as that character. So I'm just saying, I actually think playing a drunk is harder than you think, because just slurring the words isn't going to do it. To the degree that I appreciate what you're saying, I'm not sure I'm convinced. When I listen to it, I'm like, I don't know. Am I just pulling out the old thing? So, and then there's Edward, who's also a drunk. So, I mean, I agree. Quite honestly, especially in the world that we live in, meaning, sort of the world that we create with Tales, there's often drunks and barflies and you know, they're damaged people who are, and it's hard to do that well. So I'm going to take the compliment, and I'm not going to tell you whether it worked, because I'm sensitive whether it's good or bad. But
with
Edwards, don't want the cliche.
Okay.
With Edwards, I think some of the difficulty in rehearsal and truly finding him was the fear of just that fake drunk acting,
exactly,
you know. So I was just overjoyed when I feel like he's nailed it. He's funny, he's tipsy, he's not mean, he's pushing buttons, but he's sort of trying to be charming as well. I know people like Edwards, you know. So, and,
What are you saying, Glenn?
but to go from that to as sharp and nasty as Stanley is was
exactly.
just
It's
really
quite
thrilling,
fun.
you know. And make no mistake, I mean, Dead of Night, Michael Redgrave and Dead of Night was the influence for me to tackle a ventriloquist piece for Tales. I'd been wanting to do it for a while, but if you watch that segment in Dead of Night, you are watching two fully fledged characters. I mean, there's a moment where Michael Redgrave slaps the puppet, and the scene just stops. It's just absolutely, it's beautiful. It's really, really high art to me to watching that. So to be able to tackle the one character jumping into those two roles was so much fun as a writer and a director. It was great.
And of course, I have to also tribute Magic with Anthony Hopkins.
Yes,
also,
that's what I was thinking.
A very influential movie, just for a lot of reasons.
It's gorgeous, yeah.
When horror and character study were sort of much more of a piece. And I suspect that Stanley's voice comes more from Magic than Dead of Night, though I have to say Dead of Night is one of my absolute favorite. It's probably my favorite anthology film. It's so bananas.
Well, that's one of my favorite
and the wraparound
anthology segments. The wraparound is cute, and it ends
so
rather nicely.
Chilling. My favorite sort of trope when when you're back at the beginning and you're like, I can't get out.
When I came to April with the idea, you know, I came to you with it at the same time, I wanted to do a seance, but I wanted to have a ventriloquist dummy, and you're like,
I said, will you make up your mind, lad? Which is it going to be? And then he came up with evidence that
April had just done that Rue Morgue piece on seances. He talked about gastromancy, which was the art of using a ventriloquist dummy for a seance. It was huge. Right. So it was beautiful to go back to Larry.
To tell Larry, fuck you.
Yeah, I don't know. I really love that piece. I love that evening. It was a lot of fun.
You know, speaking of fuck you, having you two in the Mattress King sitting at the bar going off of each other is fucking great. I mean, and Clay writes that one, the Mattress King, and that's one of the few that someone other than you two. Yeah. And we talked for almost 45 minutes about that piece and what he did with that piece, and having you two there. Having that chance just you two to do a little audio together, what was it like?
Well, we were separated on stage by about three other actors. There was Kay Flannery and Josh Leonard, and a few other people. So I'm not that comfortable acting, you know. So I just
it was real. It was feeling real.
No, and I think I was probably in the Foley pit when I was saying half of that shit as well. So I really enjoyed it. I love the opportunity, you know. I don't get these opportunities, so to be on a stage with these guys who really know what they're doing, to be stood beside Josh Leonard, and so on. It's a real honor, and I actually do enjoy my character in Mattress King. I'm really proud of it, you know.
Well, also, I don't know. Glenn and I, we sort of act together. You know, he's always referenced when the host is sort of like, my partner Glenn McQuaid. Exactly. And the idea is that he's sort of shuffling about. I don't know. I feel he always has a presence, whether he gets to do the voice. And we always make fun of Glenn's lovely accent when he has to do the credits at the end. But we have fun. Yeah. I mean, I feel I'm often acting with Glenn, even if he's not saying anything.
Well, speaking of acting, talk about Lance Reddick, who took on Conviction as well as the aspect of the Vampire Party. We touched on it a little bit earlier, but to have him on there, and not only for what he's able to do with his versatility, being very conservative and very liberal, going from both sides with two different characters, but also vocal acting against Cooper Roth, who... incredible. Holland. His character is incredible. So compelling. And you can take that any number of ways, Glenn, on where that young man is in his life and the choice he's going to have to make ahead. And then, of course, you are there as Jesus H. Christ, and you're also there as not Doyle. What's the soldier's name? You were there as the soldier. You're the lead soldier.
I'm just yelling in the yeah.
But
That's
the
right.
aspect of it, you know, the whole piece, and especially Lance and Cooper are incredible. I don't know if it would be the same without them. And to have two, and you can hear it in the voice, and you can tell me I'm wrong, but to have two African American, it sounds African American rather than whitewashed.
Yeah.
I think even says more about it. Can you talk about Conviction?
No.
No. All right, cut. We're done.
That's it. I'm done.
You're done.
Well, I wrote the piece, and as I say, Larry encouraged me to keep going with it. I think in the writing stage, I just wanted to push myself in terms of bringing some of my fantasies into the real world a little bit. And I'd never written anything political before, or little bits and pieces here and there, but that was the first piece that was just front and center.
Right.
So we had no idea who we were going to cast at all, and it was through Daniel Noah that, it was really through Daniel Noah and Larry that we got Lance, because you convinced Lance over the phone to do the piece. I think Lance had a few reservations, right?
Bravo.
Yeah.
Can you remember what?
No, I don't remember a damn thing, Glenn.
Fair enough. Keep the secrets to the secrets.
Well,
Well, no, but I can speak passionately because I do believe in the mission, and I think it was easy to tell him that we're serious-minded and that we want to explore things. I mean, that's usually my shtick, because it's not a shtick. It's like, I think
It's you.
when needed, I can sound pretty genuine, because that's the only way I know how to do this. So I don't. If I'm just making this up, but if that's what it was, a phone call.
yeah, I was delighted.
Yeah.
Really, when Daniel had mentioned it, I was like, "Holy shit!" That's great. It's sort of also casting an African American actor in that role. Slight statement as well,
Right.
and the piece is sort of set around 2006 as well, so it's sort of, you can see parallels to Colin
Powell, yeah.
and so on. So it was a bit of luck that he read it and he was up for it. Again, I think most actors that we reach out to are intrigued with the format and intrigued with flexing those muscles, and it's a
Right.
quick gig for a lot of these. We're not asking anyone for a month of their time or anything. So Lance came in, and what really and truly blew me away with Lance was not just his commanding presence, but his versatility, because when we went from Conviction into the Vampire Party, I could not believe how well he nailed that gay man. And I know that gay
Easy
character.
now, Glenn.
He's not coming now. It
Wait,
might be
this
coming
is
later.
not. Yeah.
No, it's by all means. By all means,
Yeah.
be open about it. That's what makes Tales from Beyond the Pale so great. Is
Yeah.
the aspect that it is you and it's you,
Yeah.
and it connects in some way.
But
to that
that's
listener.
what I was saying earlier. I think we sort of shifted gears and almost did the opposite of what not the opposite, but certainly people did think I had written the Vampire Party because of the homosexual content.
Of course.
And Larry had written Conviction because of the political voice behind it as well. But certainly it was really the versatility of Lance that really blew my mind
I'm sure.
that night, because to go from the stern, commanding war criminal of Walker in Conviction into this really affable, lovely
Yeah.
gay man,
Right.
party goer.
Yeah.
It was just
with a sharp tongue.
with a
and, you know,
sharp wit and was charming. I think Josh Leonard as well came across as
Oh,
super
it's Andrew.
charming.
Oh my
Oh,
God, he
so
is
good.
so fun in this
he
movie,
is.
in that piece. It's just a delight. He really
is.
takes his time. I mean that, and the
Even
irony
when they're
is-
being evil, when I don't want to give it away, but when
But I
shit's
don't
going
want to break
to,
down the store. It's like a century old.
Yeah,
yeah,
Great.
exactly.
it's
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 pretty
fun
lovely.
how affable it all is, you know. I really like the characters of the Vampire Party, you know?
And Pat Healy and AJ.
I was going to say,
fantastic as the two soldiers. They're really menacing and sympathetic in Conviction, and then as the filmmakers, there's just a lot going on. It was a good night, wasn't it?
Yeah.
A lot of texture to that evening, and of course, we also enjoy just the overall curation of an evening. I described how Montreal, we sort of went from a heavy, long piece to something literary in the middle, and then a punk piece.
Fun.
And then I think we chose the same kind of movement with
Mattress
the LA
King
story. Yeah.
I think it was interesting starting off with Clay's piece. It's a dark piece.
But it's zany. It's sort of zany, and then the middle
But we hadn't quite done anything in that barfly world, and it's always interesting with Tales from Beyond the Pale. I like to sort of think of Tales from Beyond the Pale as actually a concrete area, that people or anything can drift into. So it's nice to shift that kind of barfly. What's the poet?
Bukowski.
Sorry, Bukowski.
Yeah.
That Bukowski voice, to push that beyond the pale, was fun to see where Clay took it. And Clay directed that piece as well.
Right, exactly.
Which was nice. He directs the Pumpkin Pie Show and so on, so I knew he was absolutely capable of it, but it was nice to see him. He's a great actor's director. He watched him from the sidelines.
He's very enthusiastic. And to be clear, yes, well,
or maybe
another voice inside of Larry. Another voice inside of Larry.
He's got many voices
together,
Larry has
literally and figuratively. That one.
It's a good thing we have Tales from Beyond the Pale to get some of these voices out.
Well, it's also the only way I can remember what happened. We recorded.
I think we're halfway through the post-production on Tales season 4, and we're about fucking wrecked like Jesus. It's a lot. There's quite a bit of work goes into these things, and it was interesting. I chatted with Larry about it. He was like, "Oh, it's a lot of me, isn't it?" It was so cool to not have that issue. I was like, because every one of those characters is different,
Oh, that's
For
true.
me, my issues were not yours.
Glenn, can I ask you real quick, and then we'll move on finally to Montreal, because we've talked about the Stanley, but writing the character of Davis, Pat Healy's character, Davis, right? He's the driver. He's the driver.
Yes.
Was it tougher writing his character or writing Holland's character? Because Holland, I can understand with the aspect, again, transitional point in his life, but Davis is someone who's almost right in the middle. He understands both sides of the issue, and that's something, no matter whether you're Republican, Democrat, whether you love the current regime or you don't, to be objective. And objective has been lost in our society, and I'm hugely objective. I see it on both sides. Many people don't, and you see it on social media all the time, the lynch party that's out there. What's tougher, writing Davis or writing Holland for Conviction?
It was interesting. I think for Holland, some of that was biographical.
I was going to say.
I killed my grandfather on a boat.
Well, hey,
Jesus told me to. No,
that's not what I meant, Glenn.
I was going to say,
can you add an echo to that?
Yeah, exactly.
No,
I
I was
laughed when you did that. Was the best one. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Glenn. Go ahead.
It's okay. I was for a time super religious when I was a kid. I really preteen knew I was gay. I was really, really freaked out about that, and I was
really, really gay.
Wow. But honestly, at that time, and this was in the early 80s, mid 80s, the only representation I was seeing of, which was largely true of every young gay kid out there, was just really horrific stereotypes. Either just these screaming old queens with poodles, or just psychotic fucking drag queens killing people in Clint Eastwood movies. And I liked Clint Eastwood. I couldn't, it was just, It was a dark period. So for me, it was easy enough to tap into a kid who was confused by conflicting sort of ideologies from people, because certainly everything I was hearing was or gay people were going to hell, or gay people were evil, or gay people were pedophiles. So all of this was really troubling to me, and I got through it fine, thank God, with friends and family. So Holland was dark to write, but second nature. Davis was interesting as well, because there's a line in that piece that comes from Jesus, and Jesus says, no one is listening to anyone anymore, and it's making the world a very dangerous place. So I wanted that to also come from a human being. So that was in the middle of Holland and his grandfather. And it's a very important moment where Davis is dismissed off screen or off audio. Right. So that Holland really is left without that.
No conscience.
Not so much no conscience, but just without that sort of middle ground or that empathy. So when that gets erased, it really is a coin toss towards the end of really what Holland's going to do. But not really, because it's a tale from beyond the pale,
right.
You know.
But the line that the grandfather says is interesting, because he really, instead of having the grandfather being so pro, this is the way it's supposed to be, he's in certain ways he's saying, make your own decision. He's saying that, but he's saying in his way, and he's going there, and Holland's going, okay, well, you said it's okay, I can do this now, and he executes what he's going to do. It's the reason why, I'm glad to talk so much about it, is because it's the most, in my opinion, the most complex tale of all of them, and it sits right in the center pretty much of it. So it's that moral compass that takes you either way for the rest of the season of Tales from Beyond the Pale. The way, whether it's the aspect of what Holland's struggle is, whether it's Davis with his struggle, or the grandfather who's got his struggle. You seem to find a voice for all of them with layers, and it's brilliant. It's brilliant in what happens, and you're right, it is a tale from beyond the pale, because it takes you down that really twisted way where we have Larry. Here is the soldier, and we have those kind of soldiers who are not necessarily there to turn him to do that. They are finding what they think their just desserts are. They are, and they're having. And the thing is, God sent us down here. You're going to listen to us. So it's not like vengeful. It's not evil. It's justified. So I'm sorry if I rambled on like that.
No, it was a fun piece, because once the characters were down, it sort of steered itself to its end.
Right.
It was a tragedy in a way where it's there. I felt like there's sort of a structure. That piece followed, which is fairly traditional in a way. So it was nice to apply it beyond the pale. And it was interesting when I wrote it. I didn't think it was funny, and it was very interesting to hear it play live and to hear the laughs. And right. I actually enjoyed that people.
He's going to take you in the butt, right? And you hear the laughs for it. It relieves the tension.
Yeah. I guess it was it's always interesting to see how an audience responds to these pieces. But it was a good piece, and I threw into dinosaur, and as diverse and weird as all those elements were, Jesus on a dinosaur, it just all absolutely had to be there, So I was really pleased with how it all connected,
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I just, I love this conversation because it brings to mind the ambition of Tales, and also the lack of, I brought this up 2 hours ago, but this sort of, we're not pandering to the genre.
Right.
We're trying to pursue stories that have their own internal logic and sort of demand to fulfill themselves, and we're trying to approach it as writers. And when we talk to collaborators and we say, would you like to consider doing a tale, we encourage them also to open their minds to what is possible, both with the audio format, and then also presumably we're a horror audio series, but we always want to have a big tent for what horror even means.
I think it's also always comes from a really personal place.
Yeah.
And for
That's
me,
what I was exactly.
We want it to be authentic, real storytelling from whatever your experience is.
Yeah. I think as I continue on just with my own writing for the pieces. They're increasingly personal, so it's nice to see where that's going. The last piece that we did, Reappraisal, was really me examining my homesickness for Ireland and my anxiety, you know. So to be able to channel all of that finally
Wow.
into something has been really great, and I think it comes from just that idea that we know once we sit down to write something that we are going to do this, you know.
Right.
So we can experiment, we can explore. I wouldn't have written anything like Conviction had it not been for Tales from Beyond the Pale. It just wouldn't exist. It would never have been written.
That canvas.
Yeah, so it's really important to me that we it's just allowed me to be a much more confident writer.
Well, that's one thing I had brought up before we went on mic about what I do off mic, and I work with special needs, and to see the way in a school system how a male is treated, and then to see how students with disabilities are treated, it's frightening, because after a certain grade, there's no empathy anymore for them. Kids are becoming adolescents, and it's becoming harder and harder for someone who already has so many different uniquenesses to be able to survive. And you just see how cruel it can be. And I mean, you're more than welcome to say yay or nay, but I've dealt with bullying most of my life. Mm-hmm. The way I look, how tall I am, now being bald, all those kind of things. Yeah, it's all joking aside, you deal with it, and it sits there and it creates those stories for you. And whether it's the vampire party with what you went through with Habit, or the aspect of Conviction, what you're going through, or what you were just talking about, the new tale, it's truly amazing to see what this radio theater is and how different it is from, and again, this goes back to where your fingerprint is, how different it is from all the other stories, because I can listen to No Sleep and I can listen to half a dozen other, and it's just about these experiences. But you go ahead and you listen to Tales from Beyond the Pale, and Larry, you'll attest how much of a fan I am, how many years I've been talking about it, and it connects. It connects. Yeah. My father is kind of where Davis is. He's a Republican, but he's not stupid. He's taught in the inner cities for 30 plus years with criminals and convicts and those in trouble. My grandfather never said he loved him ever, and he brought that with him. I mean, there's so many different stories. And Tales is as personal as you're going to get. And that's why season 4 is great, because not only is it fun, you go on stage, you guys are having a great time, you're gigging, but it's also personal, and it's personal for everyone involved, even the people all the way down to the venue who want you there. And again, I'll go back to Daniel Noah. Daniel Noah stepped up and said, I want them to be part of Spectre Fest. Yeah. You didn't have to do that. Same thing to Stanley, but they want you there. And that's how personal all the way down it is for this. And that leads it to Montreal. Montreal, we've already talked about Larry, the man who may not be able to get through the border, the aspect of being
which deserves to be its own tale.
Yes, exactly right. We find out what's really beneath that Canadian leaf right there.
Yeah, exactly.
But also being in Yuck Yucks and dealing with the aspect of entirely different world. And let me start it off in the middle with Speaking in Tongues. Speaking in Tongues is the only one that branches outside of English. It's a brilliant tale. It's smart. It's fun. The aspect of the coping mechanism, the storytelling mechanism of, as you get younger, your memory develops more and the story becomes more unraveled instead of sitting there and trying all these different devices. Speaking in Tongues, what's the thinking with it? And again, April, right?
You worked with April and myself, and I was talking to, I'm going to pronounce her name wrong, this is terrible, but Stephanie Trepanier, who works with Snowfort Films.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Stephanie does, yes.
I
Travis,
still is,
yes.
Yeah. I was chatting with her and told her we were going to do a show in Montreal, and I had no idea. And she just said, "Well, whatever you do, throw in a bit of French. They'll love you up there for it."
Stay well.
And then right off the bat, I was like, "God, do I have it in me to write a bilingual piece?" And I thought, well, yes, if the idea of a translator came in, and the idea of somebody that's going around sucking memories of people. My Alzheimer's has run in my family, so something that pops up in
Right.
the art every now and then. So
I not even thought about that. That is a great.
actually, Larry reminded me of that a while ago.
No
I don't
pun
think
intended.
So I had the idea down that this character was going to arrive in Montreal, would need a translator to go around and settle all debts, and then I call on April to come help me on that, because we had so much fun writing Cold Reading together, and she pulled a blinder on it, which means she did great. So it was just loved the idea of doing a bilingual piece, and I don't have a word of French, so
Neither do I, except for bonjour. That's about it.
yeah, somebody, Virginie Damarou, who translated the pieces that I needed to be in French. She did that for me, so it was a nice sort of group effort. But I'm very proud of that piece. I love mixing demons with the mob underworld. I'm a big fan of.
I love the sound design. I love the sound
cool.
design.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you.
It's different. Each one's different, from the gargoyle to the aspect of the rat demon to what you're seeing. It's not all the same. And the booming voices that come out of it. And the way, Larry, that you respond to them, it's, you don't change how you are. I mean, as you get younger, your voice changes, your mannerisms change, how quick your pronunciation is. I mean, all of it, just a lot of small, intimate, and that's small things, let's go with that word. But nonetheless, the way that you do the sound design in the sewer versus on top of the cathedral, it's the most scenic of all the pieces. I think I can safely say that, and you'd agree with it. It's the most scenic because you're not only all over Montreal, you're also dealing with weather, you're dealing with the aspect of how echoes are. I mean, it's just broken down so well.
It was an interesting thing. I remember when back in I Sell the Dead, when I had the idea for I Sell the Dead, it was like, okay, it's a bunch of grave robbers. How do we show a bunch of grave robbing scenes and make them all different?
Right.
It's like, okay, well, what if one's a vampire? What if one's a werewolf or a mummy? So similarly, how do you? Okay, we got this guy who's, he's trying to get back these words that he'd given all these creatures before. So it became obvious pretty quickly that this could feel like the same scene over and over again. So it had to be a different kind of creature. Like at the start, it's quite subtle. It's just really a guy, but there's a hint that he's a werewolf. And then we get into the sewers, and then we get into the gargoyles. But it really was to create different, vastly different environments with vastly different creatures, and tie that in with the mob underworld. One of my favorite comics is Hellblazer, which is a spin-off from Swamp Thing. And it's John Constantine. I guess they've made a few movies with Keanu Reeves as Constantine or Constantine.
They tried to make a TV series recently. So
They in fact did. But what was very interesting to me about the comic book is it was really filthy, gritty, East End of London, Craze Brothers meets The Exorcist, and it was so authentically grimy British, filthy, just smoking fags and just putting them out in someone's face, and really raw. It hasn't been done that much before that they get both things right. I know Landis did a movie which is quite good called Innocent Blood, and it's a fun piece, but the mob stuff is kind of cartoony. It's not super vicious or authentic. It's not like he went to full on, Goodfellas meets,
my clown, my talking to you,
Dracula, So it was fun to. Anyway, I go on, but it was fun in speaking in tongues to tie in the mob underworld with demons and so on, and do it in a way that didn't reference religion too much. I like the idea that there's a rat demon. There's no such thing as Satan, but there's a rat demon.
There's a rat demon.
And there's an old gargoyle that croaks, they're their own entities. They live beyond the pale. They don't live in the Bible.
The gargoyle is so sad in it. You feel so. Let me keep my eyes. Let me keep my ears. It's. Well, you may say fuck them all, but you also create a connection to each of these characters. Even the gypsy. The gypsy, you feel bad because she's been addicted to this, and now you're
That was Izzy.
Giving it
Izzy
back,
Lee.
yeah.
Izzy Lee, yeah.
And she plays a gypsy, the fortune teller in Skip Shay's film. You've typecast her for the rest of her time.
Goodness. The performers did great, you know, and the chap that, his name evades me now, but the chap that did the gargoyle brought a lot of emotion. He's also the guy that played the werewolf at the start, I believe.
Oh, really?
Two roles there.
You don't list any on the website of who is in that at all. It's not listed.
Is it not listed?
No, it's not listed at all.
Well, we'll
Thank God I know Izzy Lee. At least I know one, and I know him. But, you know.
But that was a fun evening. To start off with Doug's, as Larry said, Doug's was really super creepy, super muso, like just really got into the art of what it was to be a musician and to give up your life for the music, give up your soul for the music was great. It was super ambitious, so I was so relieved that we were going to get that one done first. Then into mine, which was just structurally, I don't know, it was... Yeah,
maybe out of all the episodes, it fit the best. Maybe Tales We Tell, you know, because it's tailored to that. But when you look at the aspect of speaking in tongues, it fits so well to the culture, to the language, to the people, and it feels like something that would play at Fantasia.
Yeah, well,
like
and to
they have their own world there,
and to get that done and then get into something as raucous as Barricade was just great. A Barricade was a really pleasant way to end the evening as well, because Foley was just hilarious. I mean, just big pumpkins were being smashed.
It's like an after party. You guys remember
it really was. It was like the Ramones took over for a while, you know. That ended up being a really fun evening, and we were wiped at the end of it. Do you remember cleaning up those wires and the watermelons and like I couldn't even speak.
But one thing about Doug's that was fantastic was just there was this integration. We had these really good musicians, and just Tony Todd. I love this moment when he sort of says, I mean, it's kind of the magic of the Tales experience where his voice clearly indicates that he's about to play the piano.
Right.
And when you listen to it, you completely buy into the illusion that he's like now tickling the ivories. But meanwhile, that's a guy who's way over on the other side of the stage who's starting to play.
It was nice.
And it's just, I think it's remarkably successful considering how much anxiety we had about that in pre-production.
And I also had a horrific moment. That show, it required a lot of hectic rehearsal and pre-production the day of.
Wow.
And we did not really spend a lot of time getting me to rehearse the end credits. And so I get up there, and I've got this list of French names that I just don't know how to fucking pronounce. And I died up there and apologized and did my best. And thankfully, on the season 4 shows that are out there now, I was able to go in and just redo the end credits and get the pronunciation right. But it was literally just such a mad whirlwind event that, that slightly suffered, but everyone was nice about it. And
I know it every time I go on the air. Names are the kryptonite, so I can understand that. Tony Todd's voice is Tony Todd's voice about as much of a sound design, sound effect as you're going to find?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, it's fantastic, and he was just he was a great character. He came in. It's like Glenn keeps saying, people who like the mission, I mean, they're a little resistant, why am I here? And then he got into it.
There's some great shots of Tony and the other cast just all stretched out on a sofa, you know, just really enjoying each other's company. It was great to throw him into the mix.
We'll finish it with this, and if there's anything else, I will reach out to you two gentlemen via the phone next time to talk about it. The applause and the crowd at the end of it. You make sure to include it in each of the recordings. You don't have to. You could just end it right there and go right into you, Glenn. But you don't. And I think that's one of the most gratifying things for any sort of performer, whether, from my personal stance, doing a panel, being up, talking Sons of Anarchy or talking Nightmare Before Christmas, in front of all these people who have come to see them. But the applause still feel good because I had a part of that. You guys include the applause. How does it feel at the end of the night these people have experienced these tales with you, and they're applauding, and they're there to bring that energy? What is it like?
Michael Surfers had a great quote regarding an audience and how an audience is always going to affect your performance, even if it's an audience of one, or even if it's a negative audience. They're part of the play in a way, you know. And for me, I love including the applause at the end as well, just to remind people that, hey, all of this was live, you know, and remind people that this was all one take, you know. I think I'm impressed by that. And the only thing I'd say is maybe next time I actually wouldn't. We normally get the applause from like a Foley mic or something.
Right.
We never direct the mic at the audience. I think we should, because it's always, as you say, it's a nice way to end things.
And there is quite a bit of participation. There's some chuckles and stuff,
and
we have those peppered throughout. We kind of highlight them when we can.
Right.
Even it's funny because it slightly breaks the fourth wall, but it also represents what the evenings are like. So we have a little bit of fun with the live ones to kind of play with that and just remind the listener that actually this was a communal experience.
I think we've always tried to honor what the evening was and what the event was. We've never tried to change anything up. You know, if the evening, what we get from the evening is the raw material, and we can go and, you know, fine tune things, but we have not gone in and sort of tried to make something other than what it was, even if there were a few errors here and there, you know.
There's a lot of love for what you guys do. I know as artists, it doesn't always feel that way, whether you like to admit it or not. But there is a ton out there for people who love what you do, who are out there supporting what you do, including me on the other side of the microphone here. And I thank both of you for what you do. And it's an honor to be able not only to work with you guys on something, but to be able to show it over this 4-hour broadcast. And a lot of great stuff to come with season 5, hopefully sometime soon, and more live programs, and maybe another endeavor down the line. So I look forward to it. Real quick, give the information where fans need to go.
www.talesfrombeyondthepale.com, and you can also find our audio dramas on Amazon and iTunes and all the usual outlets. But if you go to talesfrombeyondthepale.com and get your tales there, I can guarantee you better quality files. Sometimes on iTunes and so on, the stuff can be, they reduce the quality a little bit, but Tales from Beyond the Pale, you can get really high quality audio from us there.
And the money goes straight into the beer fund.
Yes.
Craft service is important.
Yes. Also, they're all available digitally, but we're very proud of our beautiful box sets. Some of them, the first 2 seasons are on CDs, and season 2 actually includes a lovely DVD that is a little making of, and that's lovely. And then the next 2, we present them on USB sticks, but it's nice to peruse the photographs and some of the commentary and so on. Physical media.
Absolutely intangible. It is incredible. And gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Fantastic.